Beginning to get on my nerves. Who are those guys?
My experience has been mostly on onshore turbines, but I think that will enlighten some of what I can share with you about what to expect about the various agencies that are going to be promoting this project. You know, the poster that advertised tonight's event says they want to put turbines where? And so who are they?
Into the microphone, please.
They remind me of the posse from one of my favorite movies, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. You remember Butch and Sundance, after they blew up the safe in the mail train, were chased by the posse. Now Butch and Sundance did everything right to shake this posse. They split up, they rode all night, they rode through streams so that the posse couldn't follow their tracks. And that's what our struggle reminds me of. We have illustrated, we have presented data, we have published facts. Nothing has stopped the wind weasels from chasing us. Who are these people?
I'm beginning to get on my nerves. Who are those guys?
Who are these people? Right now, the biggest governmental agency that we are facing is NYSERDA. Now, NYSERDA has conducted what they call the feasibility study of wind turbines on the Great Lakes. And I'll get to them in a minute. But first, I want to see if I can roast some of the non-governmental agencies that are promoting this. The first one of my targets is the Sierra Club, who recently, this month, rejected plans for an offshore wind turbine in California, offshore where the Vandenberg Air Force Base is. Sierra Club says that environment is too pristine and too abundant in diverse species. Must be Lake Erie has been insufficiently cleaned up from its century of industrial pollution. The next group is the National Audubon Society. They too rejected the offshore turbine plan in salt water off of Vandenberg Air Force Base. National Audubon Society cites, again, the presence of golden eagles in New York State. The Bluestone Wind Project in Broome County, just down the road from us here along Route 17, they discovered that there were quite a large population of golden eagles. The Audubon Society rejected the plans for the wind company. They were overruled, but they actually stood up for once and acted to preserve a precious natural resource. Must be we don't have endangered species or birds, bats, or butterflies migrating across Lake Erie. And then we have the Climate Action Council, an appointed group of 20 advisors to the goals of New York's Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. These are the guys who are promoting the banning of gasoline-powered outdoor lawn maintenance equipment. These are the guys who are considering the banning of wood for heating in New York State. Now we'll get to NYSERDA.
I'm beginning to get on my nerves. Who are those guys?
Who are these guys? The chairman of NYSERDA also chairs Generate Capital, a leading financier of wind and solar projects. Then we have a member who is the commissioner of the New York State DEC, who previously served as an executive of Clean Tech Private Equity Company. The DEC oversees the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, shorthand SEQR, which until 2011 provided the permitting framework for all wind facilities in New York State. We have a member who is a commissioner of the New York State Public Service Commission, who previously served as director of New York Clean Energy at the Environmental Defense Fund, an international wind solar lobbyist organization. We have a member who is the chairman of the New York State Public Service Commission Siting Board on electrical generating facilities, which oversees all of the Article 10 onshore wind facility permits prior to the institution of a less democratic process through the Office of Renewable Energy Siting. This person also serves on the board of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which allows New York industries to claim they are green by purchasing wind energy from out of state, even though there is no transmission capacity to move that intermittent power to New York State. We have a member of NYSERDA who is the CEO of the New York Power Authority, which studied the feasibility of offshore wind in the Great Lakes 10 years ago, only to conclude then that it was not feasible. We have a member who is a vice president of corporate affairs at Con Edison Transmission, which is charged with expanding New York's power grid to allow remote wind and solar facilities to transmit power to meet downstate demand. We have a member who was the founder of a global investment platform, and finally, a member from New York City who serves on the New York State Climate Action Council and who is certainly not dependent upon the use of wood for heating. Now, this study, the NYSERDA Great Lakes Wind Feasibility Study, which was ordered by the Public Service Commission, who certifies all major electrical facilities, regardless of their permitting framework, whether they be Seeker, Article 10, or the latest Office of Renewable Energy Siting, which we call ORAS. The feasibility study was begun late in 2020 and is to be completed at the cost of $1 million by the end of this year. The study will be forwarded to the Public Service Commission for further determination sometime in 2022. NYSERDA has offered 3 public webinars on the study, with a 4th webinar containing a final draft to be presented in 2 days. A public feedback session was presented in June, whereby it was revealed that only 162 people commented on the study, either verbally during the webinars or in written comments. Since the study also includes Lake Ontario, and since the 2 lakes together total 400 miles of shoreline, I figure that only 1 person every 2 miles of New York State's Great Lakes shoreline cares enough to commit or comment on this study. Anyway, the study is primarily an effort in data collection in recognition of major concerns related to environmental, maritime, economic, and social issues, market barriers, and cost. The study is not intended to provide detailed answers to any of these issues. Up to this time in New York State, detailed answers to questions like how much power is to be made, how many birds are going to be killed, how many migratory game fish are going to be displaced, how much pollution are we going to allow in our waters of life. These details have been offered through the permitting process. However, that process for Lake Erie wind turbines has yet to be announced by the Public Service Commission. In closing, I'd like to offer some insights in what we might expect for Lake Erie given the previous track record of the various state agencies involved. Prior to 2011, when the Seeker framework dictated permitting of wind facilities, there were a large number of wind projects that were defeated across New York State because Seeker provides a great deal of public input, especially at the level of town government, as long as the town officials are not conflicted. When you look to the south of us, if you're on the lakeshore, if you're out on the water, you'll see 2 wind farms in Chautauqua County. Both of those involve conflicted local officials. In Arkwright, 10 municipal officers are receiving leases. In the Cassadaga Wind Project, which is New York State's first Article 10 project, there's not quite as many as Arkwright, not as bad, but there's about 6 or 8 conflicted town officials. The Ball Hill project, which has yet to be constructed, is still being held up in court over an issue of conflict of interest, but they've already started clearing the trees. Governor Cuomo brought a more streamlined permitting process for wind developers through the Article 10 procedure administered by the Public Service Commission. But Article 10 backfired. Article 10 was a dismal failure for the developers. It actually proved difficult because provisions followed by the Public Service Commission allowed for concerned citizens groups to hire environmental attorneys and expert testimony to rebut the findings of signatory agencies like New York State DEC and New York State Department of Health. The resulting testimony served to inform an ever-increasing number of citizens across the state to the various risks and hazards of wind turbines in rural communities. It was through the Article 10 process that citizens learned how little the wind industry can contribute to our power needs. And Rich Davenport will speak a little bit to this, or a lot, I hope, to this as well. What we learned through Article 10, an average size wind facility, 100 megawatts, that's pretty much what Arkwright UC is, that's pretty much what Cassadaga is. What is their ability? If they operate at an inflated 30% capacity factor, they can reduce the carbon emissions of New York State generation by 0.5%, not including the parasitic load from the grid to keep the machines spinning. Thus, today's total installed capacity in New York State, right now, we have 2,200 megawatts total installed capacity. Theoretically, they could reduce our total emissions by a whopping 10% if we overlook the factors of inefficiency that they are unwilling to admit to. Article 10 also revealed that little or none of the present 220 megawatt of capacity can reach downstate markets due to transmission bottlenecks. Article 10 testimony also revealed that our Western New York grid region is 90% emissions free. We're not the problem here, folks. While downstate is now 90% dependent on fossil fuel for generation. At the time, the Article 10 hearings informed us that New York State was 80% fossil dependent. Those people downstate closed the Indian Point nuclear plant, so now I'm giving them 90%, but pretty much they're 100% fossil dependent down there after they closed a functioning nuclear plant that was nowhere close to requiring its retirement. So, Article 10 was failing. The developers in 2019 again approached Governor Cuomo with complaints. Article 10 is too slow, it's too cumbersome. The Public Service Commission's oversight of the process was ditched in favor of what we now call the ORS framework, which was written by the wind developers and adopted by the one-party state legislature in 2020 to be an intentionally less democratic permitting process. Provisions of the seeker no longer apply. Local zoning regulations for turbine setback distances and noise no longer apply. ORS features a one-size-fits-all regulations for all municipalities, regardless of their individual environmental qualities. Developers are guaranteed a certificate of operations by the Public Service Commission, automatically guaranteed a certificate 1 year from their initial application to the Public Service Commission or to the ORS office, regardless of any local concerns. And finally, of course, some major state agencies still have consulting role in the ORS process. For its part, the Public Service Commission has already ruled in Article 10 cases that property value losses from near proximity of wind turbines cannot be mentioned. The DEC showed its concern for the environment by relenting to wind developers who had previously agreed to restrict forest clearing to late fall and winter months. They whined to the Siting Board, the Public Service Commission, and then to the DEC. The DEC now allows them to cut hundreds of acres of forest during the maternal nesting seasons of spring and summer. In Chautauqua County, in its first Article 10 case, testimony on bat mortality, the DEC appeared ready to accept expert testimony to stop the turbines during very low and unproductive wind speeds during bat migrations. Only later, after pressure from the wind developer, did the DEC allow the turbines to continue spinning at low speeds with an admission that certain environmentally endangered bat species would be taken. But wait, as mitigation for avoidable bat mortality in Chautauqua County, the DEC has announced an enhanced bat habitat on Long Island, where no turbines are allowed in wealthy towns with strong anti-wind zoning.
Beginning to get on my nerves. Who are those guys?